If you've spent any amount of time online, there's plenty of videos that give relationship and dating advice. And one of the things they always harp on is the importance of communication. However, I don't feel like they ever really explain how to communicate properly. So today I wanted to make this video talking about some experiences I had that allowed me to figure those things out, or at least step in the right direction. And to be quite honest, some of it was counterintuitive. This first story I'm going to tell deals with probably the hardest aspect of communication, and that's talking to complete strangers. When I started college way back in the day, I met this girl who I was crazy for. After we talked for a while, she invited me to her family's New Year's Eve party. I was excited to go to that because it meant more time for us to spend together, but I didn't know any of her relatives or family. And it just so happened that when my parents dropped me off at the event, I actually got there before she did. So I don't know what came over me that day. I'm not normally that sociable, but I think I was just head over heels, so I was feeling confident. I walked right up to the front door by myself. It was her grandma's house, if I remember correctly, and knocked on the door, introduced myself, and thankfully her grandmother was nice enough to take me around and introduce me to different people. But the key thing I remember from this was I smiled at everyone that I met, and I introduced myself very confidently. Like I went up to them, smiled, shook their hand, and when they told me their name, I was interested in hearing their name. And a quick side thing is, I know a lot of people struggle with remembering individuals' names. I do so myself, and if you can remember to do this in the moment, something that really helps is to look them in the eyes when they say their name, and you just create that mental association with the appearance of their face with the name they just said. Now, obviously, you have to remember this. There's plenty of times where like you get overwhelmed and you're introduced to a bunch of people and you're like, oh, I should have done that 30 seconds after the fact, and you've forgotten everyone's names. This has happened to me, which also means it's okay. It's not a big deal if you don't do that. But anyways, I was led out to the backyard where people were just sitting, hanging out, having a good time. And there wasn't really anyone my age. It was mostly, like aunts and uncles. So they were quite older than me. And then there was a few cousins, but they looked like they were at the end of elementary school, beginning of high school. So based on knowing myself and my interests, I decided to take the risk of sitting with the cousins because I felt like there were probably more things that we could connect on based on our age range. One of the easiest things to do when it comes to making conversation with people is just listen. Just ask them how they're doing. And this is part of the counterintuitive thing that I was mentioning earlier. Listening is not just nodding your head and going, yeah, oh, really? Oh, okay. Because if you're not retaining the information they're saying, then it's not going to give you data to lead you to the next point in the conversation. So with active listening, what you're doing is latching on to specific moments. For example, if someone says, I really like Star Wars. I just bought the new Xbox console so I can play Battlefront. Even if you don't know shit about Battlefront or Star Wars, you can say something like, really, what made you decide to get an Xbox over a PlayStation? It sounds like you're into sci-fi. Is Star Wars at the top of the list? Are you a Star Trek fan? And then when they get offended for you mentioning Star Trek, you can, practice your melee combat. I'm just kidding. But what I'm trying to get at here is you just want to look for new branches in the conversation that you can follow along with so you can keep it going. And eventually, believe it or not, you may end up talking about something you are really passionate about, and suddenly you can just start gushing. Within reason, of course. By the time the girl I was talking to actually showed up at the event, which was probably an hour later, I had already built rapport with everyone I was sitting next to. Normally, it's the reverse. You're hoping that someone you know is there so you feel comfortable and you can kind of like stick to them the whole time. But this was where like I did the hard thing, and then when she got there, it was like a bonus. I'm gonna tell you the most practical piece of advice I have that you could do right now, even if you're not conversating with anyone. But first, I have to get through this story. So because I was such a shy individual growing up and not super confident, I thought doing something extreme like theater would help break me out of that. I took acting classes in high school, which made me physically ill from anxiety. I did plays in college, and I had this impression that by doing so, people would be impressed by me. They would think I'm like super cool or interesting or whatever because I can get up on stage. In reality, this kind of is true, but it's very temporary, and you have to maintain that because no one's just gonna like love you forever. So I would do these shows, and there would be after parties, right? With the cast, crew, people in the department. I'd go to these parties and think, oh, well, it's gonna be so easy. Like, we all have this thing in common, which is theater. Bro, it was the most awkward shit I've ever done. Like, trying to talk to someone at those events was just, it was impossible for me. One thing, unfortunately, that connects a lot of people, especially when they're strangers, is drinking and smoking, which I mean, I drank in college, but I did not smoke. I didn't enjoy smoking. I just could not do that. And I'll tell you, man, those theater kids, they're just a bunch of stoners. So it made it really awkward and difficult for me to connect with people. And I'll tell you the number one mistake that I was making that really made it all worse. I wasn't making the effort. I thought just because of our shared background, it would be easy. People would just talk to me. But that wasn't the case. Granted, it all depends on the context in which you're meeting people. If you're going to a college party, a lot of people may not necessarily be in a state to have a conversation like that. But what I'm trying to get at is that it takes effort no matter what. You have to be willing to ask questions and insert yourself into certain conversations in order to build a connection. Okay, so these two stories I've told have had a lot to do with actual practice, getting out there and getting the reps in. Now, this last thing will involve learning, and I think this is pretty crucial before you even go out and try to make conversation with more people. So over the last 15 or so years, podcasting has become super popular, either for people to start podcasts or to listen to them. It was around 2017 that I think I first heard the Joe Rogan podcast. Now, regardless of how you feel about the guy, that's kind of besides the point of this video. There's a reason why he attained the success that he did, and it's quite simple, actually. And it made a profound difference in how I approached social situations going forward, especially after those awkward theater parties I was telling you about. What he exhibited, especially during those 2017 days of podcasting, was a beautiful balance between active listening, right? I would say that's the foundation, as well as not being afraid to have a strong opinion, plus asking good questions based on the information that was just received, that you just listened to. So for example, if someone comes on the show and you sit down and you listen to them and they say something along the lines of, when I was 15, I went to the woods and got lost for the first time. An example of active listening there would be, you were 15 when that happened? And then you sort of put yourself in the shoes of what it would be like to be lost in the woods at 15, which sounds kind of terrifying now that I say it. Another great question to ask based on that context is, well, where were your parents at the time? And the person might respond with, well, they were at home and I kind of went off on my own and I didn't know what I was doing. I was being dumb. And then if you feel comfortable, you offer a strong opinion. It could be something like, well, it seems kind of irresponsible that they weren't paying attention to where you were at. Or it might be like, well, what were you thinking at the time that you decided to run away? It might sound accusatory, but depending on how you say the words, it can actually tell the other person that you are genuinely interested in what they have to say. That's the most important thing here. And then as you get better and better at building these skills, you will figure out which people are withholding information from you and which are more forthright, and how you can sort of give and take. But I will tell you, if you try this at all, most people will be appreciative that you actually want to listen to them. You know why? Because most people want to hear themselves. Like this fool who's talking to the camera right now. It's also important to remember that these people are people too. They're just as nervous, they're just as awkward. If you can go in with the mentality that you kind of have a plan and you're gonna make them feel comfortable, you'd be surprised what a long way that goes. You might even surprise yourself. I don't know. You just gotta go out and try it. And speaking of going out and trying it, you're gonna mess up. Just accept it now. I didn't want to sit down and record this video because I thought it was gonna sound horrible. It might, but I did it anyway. It's just the practice. And you may get some really awkward feedback. You're like, why are you talking to me, creep? Why'd your video show up on my feed, weirdo? But you take that information and you apply it to the next interaction. That's how this works. There's no short, easy way about it. I would say just listen to podcasts. That'll help you. Listen to people have conversations. I'm not talking about that true crime stuff. Like people having one-on-one genuine conversations. Doesn't have to be Joe Rogan. Be whoever. Whoever you feel resonates in an authentic way. So TLDR, watch, listen, learn, go out and apply. Don't judge when you inevitably screw up. Thank you. I'll see you in the next one.